Well, what happens? Chemical Bank. Well, by the way, J.P. Morgan has in the past been headed by a Jesuit. And that Jesuit's name is Chris Lowney, a one-time managing director of American financial giant J.P. Morgan. A former Jesuit himself and graduate of the Jesuit Fordham University of New York, Lowney explained how each of the virtues can be applied to today's management. Pardon me, this type is so small I can hardly read it. But here we have Chris Lowney. He was a Jesuit, and he headed J.P. Morgan Bank. You see how the Jesuits run J.P. Morgan? And just find him on the web. It's under Catholic Education, Light of Truth. And look under Chris Lowney, Lowney. Another stinking Jesuit running the big banks. Well, what happened with Chemical Bank? Chemical Bank was run by the Knights of Malta. And in 1986, it acquired Texas Commerce Bank. At the end of 1991, it acquired Manufacturers Hanover Corporation. 1996, Chemical acquired Chase Manhattan Corporation. And continued under the Chase name until acquiring J.P. Morgan & Company in December 2000 to form J.P. Morgan Chase & Company. Throughout all these acquisitions, Chemical's original management team remained in charge of both the bank and its private investment group, J.P. Morgan Partners, until acquiring Bank One in 2004. J.P. Morgan is run by the Knights of Malta. And there is a telex from the J.P. Morgan office in New York City to the Vatican, according to Martin Lee in his great article, Who Are the Knights of Malta? So J.P. Morgan is getting $25 billion. That's number 7. Got 2 more to go. Bank of New York Mellon. Who's the head of this? Why, it's Robert P. Kelly, another white Gentile. White Gentile Robert P. Kelly, CEO. Now, what about this Robert Kelly? Who is this? He's the CEO. Well, just check out the New York Mellon Corporation. It's a global financial services company formed on July 1st, 2007, as a result of the merger of the Bank of New York and the Mellon Financial Corporation. Mellon was big in Pennsylvania, especially in the Pittsburgh area. So this is recently formed. It's only a little over a year old. And they're getting $2 to $3 billion from the bailout. Well, let's take a look at Robert P. Kelly, this white Gentile. Maybe we can learn something about him, who heads this bank right now. Robert Kelly, Bob P. Kelly, born in 1954, CEO of the Bank of New York Mellon. Robert Kelly grew up in Nova Scotia and went to St. Mary's University in Halifax. Does that ring a bell with some of you? St. Mary's University in Halifax is a Jesuit university. Do you know who contributed millions of dollars to that university? And Lewis Mortimer Bloomfield. Bernard Bloomfield and Lewis Mortimer Bloomfield. 2 Jews, racial Jews, who converted to Catholicism, became Knights of Malta. They financed that Jesuit institution, and they also were financing the Pope's David Ben-Gurion in Israel, in the Pope's Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem. All of this at a St. Mary's University in Nova Scotia, Halifax. After getting an MBA in Cass Business School, he spent 19 years in Toronto Dominion Bank. He joined First Union as Chief Financial Officer in 2000, played a key role in its merger with Wachovia. So here now the Jesuits merging First Union with Wachovia, and then they're going to merge Wachovia with Wells Fargo. And Bill O'Reilly isn't telling us about this on Fox News, is he? Nor is Keith Olbermann, those sinners. Or Chris Matthews, that Jesuit. He then moved to Mellon Financial in February 2006 and sold to the Bank of New York within a year. He is the CEO of the new merged entity. This is the Jesuit, Robert Kelly, who is the CEO of the Bank of New York Mellon, another white Gentile. Number 9, State Street Corporation. They're getting $2 to $3 billion. Who's the CEO? Ronald Logue, L-O-G-U-E, another white Gentile. And what can we find out about Ronald Logue, L-O-G-U-E, the CEO and chairman of State Street Corporation? Well, if we go to Wikipedia, even they'll tell us that Ronald Logue was trained by Jesuits at one of their colleges. And the college that he was trained at was Boston College. Ronald Logue is another Jesuit temporal coadjutor trained by the Jesuits at Boston College, and he is also on the board of directors of the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. In fact, there is a Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, Federal Reserve Bank of New York City, Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, every one of them Jesuit cities with Jesuit universities. Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, Federal Reserve Bank of New Orleans, all with Jesuit universities in those cities. Every one of them. And they're getting $2 to $3 billion. So, these 9 banks that are getting money as a result of this bailout, every one of them has been run by white Gentiles except one, and he is a Pope's Jew, a member of the CFR. So let's dispel this nonsense that the Jews run the banking system on New York and Wall Street. Wall Street is the Pope's. It belongs to his Knights of Malta, high-level Freemasons, overseen by the Archbishop of New York, that same sinner who brought down the World Trade Center on 9/11. That same sinner who has orchestrated this financial crash so that they can nationalize our banks, and the government controlled by the Pope can control every one of our assets, real and personal. This is Brother Eric John Phelps, Biblical Truth and History and Prophecy. Thanking you for tuning in today. I trust this was informative. I have a book, Vatican Assassins, Wounded in the House of My Friends. It's in book form or CD. You may order that if you go to biblio.com and use PayPal. I have a PowerPoint that is very good and I think important for your library. That's 20 Federal Reserve notes. I have the Engineer Corps of Hell for 10. I have the Jesuit Watch for $40 a year. And if you purchase the Jesuit Watch for this year, I will add these works. Please support First Amendment Radio, as it is kind enough and gracious enough to have me on. I don't know how long we'll be able to do this. I trust you get copies of these broadcasts. Keep them in your libraries. Check the information and facts that I give you. And know this: the Lord is on His throne and all is well. Continue to serve Him and do His will according to the AV 1611. We shall meet tomorrow. Lord bless.